All right, welcome to the first episode of the Rap Thought Podcast. I'm Matt Rayla here with Brandon Goodman.
How's it going?
And today we are going to be breaking down Eminem's new album, Music to Be Murdered By. Kind of crazy how this album came out. It was a surprise release, and I remember just being on, I think it was Spotify. They have a playlist called the Release Radar. And it show all the artists that I follow. It shows me when their music comes out, and I was checking it Thursday night at 9 p.m. and that's when all the new music comes out because it's technically midnight on the East Coast. So I was running through it, and I see Eminem, and I'm like, "What the fuck? Is this real?" So then I immediately click on it. He has an album out. I take a screenshot and I send it to Brandon.
Dude, I was literally at the gym when you sent me that text message. I was about to get on the treadmill. And it's funny because this is the second time in a row that's happened. When he dropped Kamikaze, it was also another surprise album. And I was also at the gym when you sent that to me. So both times I was like, okay, well, when I get home, I'm immediately downloading this. Personally, I'm a big M fan.
Wait. You couldn't just listen to it at the gym? You couldn't roll up on Spotify and bring it up?
I don't have Spotify. I don't do that.
You need to step your game up.
I'm not doing those Spotify thing. But yeah, so when I got home, I did my set at the gym, got my 2 miles out the way, headed home and downloaded it.
I don't know if I would have done the 2 miles. I think I would have just went home.
No.
So I can get the album.
No, I got to get my sweat. I have to get my running.
All right.
So Eminem for me is one of there aren't too many artists for me where you drop something and I will immediately pick it up. I have to say maybe he and Kendrick are the two artists right now where I will pick up their album regardless of what it is. So if the
auto cop, as they say, as the kids say.
Yes.
The auto cop.
I will automatically cop that, no questions asked. It would have been interesting, if technology was like it was 15 years ago, because if he dropped Encore, I probably wouldn't have been as happy about it, but I still would have picked it up. So, but anyways, when I got home, I downloaded it and went through the whole track list before going to bed. It's an interesting album. It's cool that he dropped another surprise one. Some of the theories I saw behind that were as a result of him dropping Revival, where he released the track list. We saw all the features that were on it, and immediately people went to town attacking like, this is going to be garbage, this is going to be trash, this is going to be this and that.
Yep, I remember that very clearly.
So then, that happened. People came out, and I would agree that the possibility that people already had preconceived notions about how this album was going to be. So he followed up with Kamikaze, and no release date, nothing, no speculation, and we get a surprise drop. And then he does it again with Music to Be Murdered By. The theory that I believe behind this is that if it's released at once and we all hear it at the same time, we can't have these top people developing ideas for us because they're saying these things, and then regardless if we fall on board, we're heading in with expectations that this is not going to be great.
Well, I think the surprise release is kind of a new thing within the last 6-7 years. I think Beyonce kind of took it to the next level when they did it. So for me, I like the track list, seeing the track list ahead of time. I get excited when I see some of my favorite artists being featured on a big album. I think that's really cool. I try not to have it sway my opinion of, not my opinion, but how I think the album's going to go based on the track list. I'm more of like, all right, I'm excited to listen to this, or I don't know about that feature. Let me check this out. But I know there are people that are, they probably looked at the track list for Revival and was just dismissed it right away. They're like, nope, this is not what I want from Eminem. But what's funny is when I look at the track listing on Music to Be Murdered By, if I saw this track list 2 weeks prior to when it came out, I'd be excited. I'd be stoked. I'd be like, he's got some of my favorite rappers and he's doing the features that I've always wanted Eminem to do on his album. I want him to do Slaughterhouse. I want him to have Black Thought on his album. I love that Anderson .Paak's on it. So I think if I saw this ahead of time, it would have made me really excited to listen to it.
So the question for you though is, do you feel like this new track list comes from the backlash that he got from Revival? So
I just based off of Kamikaze, he made that whole album because of what people said about Revival. He had an immediate reaction to it, and he's like, he got pissed off and he got angry, and he was like listening to what people had to say about it, and he made changes.
Right.
Like obviously, like he changed up the next album that he did, next 2 albums.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. I think that there are pros and cons because, like you said, when growing up and your favorite artist is about to drop something, you're like, oh my god, who's on it? Who's going to be on here? Is this person going to be on here? Is this going to be on here? We look forward to that. The thing that I feel that happened was with Revival was that there was an imbalance. There's an imbalance in the amount of features and the preconceived notion of what that particular artist brings. Okay, the last song that he did with Pink was Don't Back Down, I think it was, which was kind of like a fight, kind of like getting you pumped up to go do something. Good gym song. But there's Ed Sheeran. His songs are pretty low key. Beyonce can be low key. As of lately, she's been very up. And a couple other features. And I feel like when you compare Eminem coming up to the features that were on there, there's this clash of like, okay, Eminem's supposed to be this, this hot-headed person that just doesn't give anything about what people say. But then there's artists that are joining this album: Alicia Keys, Pink, Beyonce, Ed Sheeran, Skylar Grey, that are they're bringing in a different feel and tone to this music that kind of counters that a little bit. So when you have that, that's where the cons come in now, because with technology and with everybody has a platform these days and they're all giving their opinion. So with that said, of like, hey, this is what I'm used to Eminem, but the artists that he's bringing in it's like oil and water that doesn't make sense. Then the agenda of like, hey, he's gonna drop something lame.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the music has to be good. I don't care what your features are. That doesn't matter. The music has to be good. And I think it's pretty safe to say that the music just wasn't good on Revival.
No.
In spite of any kind of message or what he was trying to say, I don't think that matters. It's like, do people like the music?
Mm-hmm. But I think there's also there could be the question of there's the production, there's what the beats, the production, versus the content of behind or in front of the music that's being out there. If you want to talk about the production and the beats and the music, I can agree that it's not the best work. If you want to look at the content, that's some of his deeper stuff. There was a lot of vulnerability in there. However, those two, that's a different conversation. And we can go on about that for days, about Revival, but we'll talk about music to be murdered.
Right.
Which where we are now.
He did, just to point out what you were just saying about him being vulnerable, he did have some really vulnerable songs on Music to be Murdered By.
True.
He had a song about his stepdad. He had a song about his estranged father, his blood father, that he hated. And he wrote a song about it, and it was pretty deep. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the production on that song, but I think it really shows that he's being vulnerable still.
What do you think of the album overall as we talk about the tracks? Would it all cumulatively, what did that do for you?
I really enjoyed the album. I was actually kind of surprised. I mean, Kamikaze was cool. I enjoyed it. I think Music to be Murdered By kind of took it to the next level beyond Kamikaze. So I like most of the songs. Like, I'm only skipping probably 4 or 5 songs on this.
So, okay, I have to ask this too. So when you look at an album, I'll give myself as an example. When I see an album and I see that the title is Music to be Murdered By, I always assume that there's going to be an underlying theme, obviously, or a story to this album.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it called this? What are the tracks saying about the title of this album? So with that said, when you hear that song, Those Kind of Nights, are you questioning and not seeing what does this have to do with the title?
A little bit, yeah. I also, not just with the title, I think you're right that I do take a look at, all right, how does this song fit with the whole theme of the album? But also, how does it fit with the sound of the other songs? How does it fit in the track listing? Does it fit in between the other songs that are around it? And it for me, it just kind of, the flow of it doesn't really work. It's right after the interlude with Alfred Hitchcock talking about being murdered, and it's like, and then it goes into clubbing with Ed Sheeran, and it's like, this is weird. But going past that, I also really didn't like In Too Deep. Not my jam. Leaving Heaven with Skylar Grey, just, he needs to stop working with her. It's the same song every time.
So we have to go back to In Too Deep.
Okay.
Because I know you're not a fan of that song. What is it about the song that you're not too big a fan of, though?
It's just a little cheesy for me.
This is how I perceive the song.
Okay, this is one where he's cheating.
Yes.
And the girl's cheating on her boyfriend. I don't need this from Eminem. Why is Eminem talking to me about this? I don't need this from M.
You know what? That's okay. That's okay. I totally respect all of that. The thing that I agree, I like this song because this is something that we deal with in every day. People cheat all the time. This kind of gives a story behind, hey, these are my feelings about this person. Mm-hmm. He's in too deep because he's been in this relationship too long. He has something fresh, the person that he's cheating with. Mm-hmm. As to why he can't just break it off with the person that he's in a committed relationship, I don't know. If you ask anyone, any cheater or anyone cheating why they don't break it off, they don't know either. So for me, this is kind of like this is something that we talk about all the time. It's just, but we say, hey, this person's cheating, get rid of them. We don't really talk about it, but the thing that we don't talk about is the feelings that people are going through as they're cheating. And so This is where I feel this song is kind of cool because, if you think about it, think about back in the day when you were in middle school. You had a crush on Lily, whoever Lily is. You have a crush on Lily, and then there's like a new girl that comes to school. Then there's Clarissa, and it's like, hey, I like Clarissa now. We just jump from girl to girl, boy to boy, or anything like that. We grow up. We live liking multiple people, but we don't. When we're finally, we do more of liking multiple people than actually staying in with somebody because we have to attract that person. If they're not attracted to us, it doesn't go anywhere. So we're like, okay, this didn't work out. I'm going to like the next person. So who's to say that process goes away when you're in a relationship with someone? You're in a relationship with Amy. You've been doing this for a long time. But then in your science class, there's Jamie. And you meet her and you talk to her and it's like, hey, this girl's pretty cool. It's just like meeting a friend. Mm-hmm. But because it's the opposite sex, same sex or whatever else, you're interested in this person. But you don't want to break it off with the past person because they're cool too. You would like to have, maybe someone would like to have a Skittle and an Eminem in their mouth at the same time, but that's fruits and chocolate, which doesn't work. So you have to pick one or the other.
Right.
And a lot of people don't.
I understand Eminem's, what he's doing in that song and what he's trying to convey. It's just like, again, it doesn't fit with the album. If I want to listen to hip hop music about relationships and how to deal with them and how to work through it, I'm not going to Eminem for that. I'm just not. I don't think he's going to speak to me in the way that I'm going to hear him. It almost, because he's such a good writer, I feel like he's just writing a story. And I don't think there's it doesn't feel like there's a lot of personal connection. I think he's just really good at writing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could also agree that Eminem's probably not the first person I would go to for relationship advice, given his come up with Kim and everything.
Right.
However, though, in terms of just objectively looking at the content, that's where I have a respect for the song. But I totally understand your thought on that.
I'm skipping Stepdad. I think it fits with the album. I just don't like the beat. And the hook is horrendous. like I can't even repeat it, but it's so bad. Just I hate my stepdad. I'm like I can't. It's a little too cheesy for me.
It's funny because I feel like growing up with Eminem, I always look forward to his albums because he's the we all listen to different artists for different things. I listen to Eminem because I like the cleverness of how he has these innuendos or these double entendres in his music. I also like just the content that he talks about is very humorous to me. There aren't too many artists that make me laugh.
It's tongue in cheek.
It is, for sure. The thing that was weird about this song is you have Eminem in his mid-40s talking about his stepdad still.
Right.
So in terms of maturity and age, it is weird to hear this song. If I heard him doing this song maybe in his 20s, I'd be like, oh, okay. But I don't know. Personally, I am trying to take an objective standpoint to a lot of the songs.
Do you think it's therapeutic for him to write that kind of stuff?
That's a good question.
Or do you think what I think about why he's doing it is I think he knows, which is smart, he knows a lot of people in America can relate to that song. Whether it's as intense or as crazy as his story. The divorce rate's 50% in this country. Then that's a lot of people that are going to have stepmoms and stepdads.
50%, right?
So,
at least.
So I'm sure a lot of kids can relate to it in some way, like probably not in this extreme way in the song, but in the same way where they're like, I don't like this person that's now in my life and they have to be there and I don't have a choice.
Right.
So I think it's smart that he's doing it. I just don't like the song, like the hook. I don't like the beat. I understand what he's saying and it's funny and it's got some comedic elements to it and it's got some like real serious elements to it.
Yeah, if his stepdad stomped out his chihuahua, that's pretty messed
That's
up.
insane.
Yeah.
I don't yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So but those are, I guess I like that too because there's some elements, this song, I can go on both sides of the fence. There's parts where this song can feel cheesy and immature for the age range. However, for the collective, as you were saying, like there's some people with divorce rates being as high as they are, and with people being able to relate to this on different levels. I think it's interesting to look at, whether, like in one part of the song, he's talking about being framed by his stepdad because, he got beat for leaving the light on when he witnessed him turning the light on when he knows he turned it off. Right. But yeah, abuse is rampant in families. And so, I like what this song addresses of being an abusive, household with a stepdad that you don't click with, no matter walking around on eggshells, doing your best to stay out of his sight, to stay under.
Right. And he's also talking from the perspective of a second grader, like his second grade self.
Right.
So he's getting into the mind of being a second grader, and I think that's where you're getting like the immature part of it. But I think him as a 40-year-old writing from the perspective of a second grader, it's interesting and it's different, and I think he does it because he knows he can execute it
right
in a good way. I just don't think he executed it in the best way. I think he could have done it in a better way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
All right. So we've talked about the songs that I skip. Are there any songs that you skip?
Let's see. It's interesting because at first there's a song that you hear and you're like, I don't really want anything to do with that. The first song for me,
the intro?
No, the intro was good. I have to say maybe the first song I may have skipped was Darkness. Okay. And I have to say that actually was more of an accident. Now, the more that I learned about it, the more I was like, hey, I actually shouldn't skip that one.
Right.
But that's going back and...
So what was your initial feelings when you heard it? Like, was it unnerving? Like, were you uncomfortable? Why did you want to skip it?
I skipped it just because, did it make me feel uncomfortable? I don't know. I think I skipped it just because maybe some eagerness to get to the rest of the album, and that was kind of slow. And when you first hear something, it's almost, those people that need to read the last page of a book before they're invested in the book because they want to know what happens. that may be me going into this particular song where I didn't really know where it was going. It's kind of slow. I tend to not like slow songs until I know what they're about. Am I skipping to the last 15 seconds of a track and to know what's going on? No. But, it took me to warm up, and I was like, okay, this is kind of slow. It got pretty dark. We're in the mind of a shooter. But however, in the end of that song and seeing what unfolded and the build up and everything, that was a powerful song. Yeah. So I initially had thoughts about it, but then at the end, and then as I saw, took a look at what other people were saying about it, I was like, okay, this is a good song.
I agree with you. My initial thoughts was, I don't like this song. From the first time I heard it, I knew by the end of it, obviously that he's talking about the Vegas shooter, and I was just like, this is just Eminem like doing horrorcore rap. And just shooting up people and, making it that he's a rapper.
Which is not unlike other tracks that he's done in the past.
Yeah. And then I listened to it some more. And then I went online and looked at what other people were saying about it. And I kind of took a step back and I was like, okay, Eminem's doing something a little bit deeper here. He's trying to send a message to America. And he's trying to convey something, and he did it in a really creative way. The first 2 verses are all just double entendres to shooting.
Yeah.
Like that, and you think he's rapping, you think he's about to go on stage.
Right.
You think he's getting ready to, kill the crowd, so to speak. Like, hey, I'm gonna murder this crowd with my raps. And it turns into him being the Vegas shooter, and he's really trying to prove a point that
we're desensitized to this at this point.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, this is a real issue that we're facing. Like, people are shooting up schools left and right, and yeah, I think it had a bigger impact on me after I listened to it a few more times.
Yeah, and you know what? To kind of clarify what I was saying before, I think this becomes a song that I skip because it's so deep.
Right. You got to be in the right mood or whatever to listen to this. This is not a song you want to listen to while you're at the gym.
Right.
It's a little too unnerving.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those songs that you want to show hey, as you were saying, this is a powerful song, and it's very descriptive, and it's.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Immortal Technique's "Dance with the Devil," where I don't know. Have you heard that song?
I'm sure you have. I probably have. I need to hear it again.
It's a really slow song, and it's basically Immortal Technique just telling the story of this guy getting into a gang, and he has to rape a woman to get initiated into the gang. And then he finds out that the woman's his mom.
I have heard that song.
Yeah, so very unnerving song. You don't want to listen to it all the time. It's very uncomfortable to listen to, but it's also very powerful and it's very impactful. And I think that song had a very big impact on a lot of hip hop, listeners.
You know why I didn't recognize this song as you were talking about it? Because it's something that I skip because I know how the song is, and as you said, you have to be in the right mood.
It's kind of. I think they're both really intense songs, and they're both gonna make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of movies and books and TV shows that make you uncomfortable, and they have their purpose. They have their place. Eminem knows that he has a lot of influence, and so that he can put out a song like this, and he can incite people to have some second thoughts about how they thought about gun control and those kinds of things.
Right. I think what happens with these killers is that we just want to write them off. You're a dirtbag. We want nothing to do with you, whatever else. But it's interesting to take the perspective and fill the shoes of the person doing it to see why did they do that? Even if we completely make it up as to why we do it. I like to live that life in general where I want to know the reason why someone did something. So maybe I come up with my own perspective, but it helps me deal with it and go along with it. As you can imagine, as many would agree, to commit a mass shooting like that is something that is unfathomable. That's a complete train of thought that I hope that I'm never on. But this song can kind of possibly give you a perspective of, hey, this is Eminem's take of why he may have done it. which I find really interesting.
Yeah.
So, but that's that song, Darkness. It's deep, but it's a good song. Not one that I'm going to replay.
What are you skipping that you can't listen to? You're like, this is not for me.
To be honest, so like you said, overall, I really like the album. I think it's pretty cool. The one I can't really get on board with, no pun intended, is Little Engine. Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't think I understand that song. I don't know if it's because I haven't listened to it enough. I don't know if it's because I'm not connecting with the things that he's saying, but I can't really get on board with that song.
I agree. I skipped that song. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's just kind of like just rapping. Like he's just showing off his skill, I guess. I don't know. I'd have to like take a deep dive into it, but
yeah. And that's the thing is, I need to hear that one more because, like like we talked about in the intro, like I need to have a definitive reason as to why I don't like this song. So, I mean, that's kind of about it for the ones that's kind of it for the ones I don't like. That sounds kind of agree on the same for those.
I mean, going through the tracks that I really like, I think the intro's fire. Like he's going hard at everyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Eminem needs to stop being mad at people not liking his music or giving him bad reviews. Like, who cares? Well, he's at that point in the career where it doesn't matter if you get a 1 star from Rolling Stone. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. His career does not hang on the opinions of music critics.
Well, that's cool because that's a good segue into it's number 19 of the album, but in No Regrets, because he kind of he mentions that a little bit. Obviously with the song No Regrets, he has no regrets about anything that he did, and he states that he would do it again. I like how he kind of takes his foot off the brake a little bit in terms of some of the people that he wish he didn't go after. Mm-hmm. Like he mentioned how Tyler the Creator and Earl Sweatshirt, they shouldn't have suffered the brunt of a lot of what he said. Mm-hmm. But there were some people that were very much deserving of it. So it kind of tells that, Kamikaze was this reactionary album, to what the critics were saying about Revival. But the Music to Be Murdered By touches on, I don't regret it. And I'm out here to murder these people that, are saying this and that about my album. Right. But I probably shouldn't have gone as hard as I did.
I mean, what's funny about Eminem is, like, he has songs like that, but then he has so many, like, other, like, deep songs that he has a lot to say. It's like you don't need to waste time on your album dedicated to haters. Like, that's just not necessary.
But that's how he built his career, though. I mean, that's how he built his career.
Right, but he needs to transition like Jay-Z transition. Like Eminem, I don't know if he could do a 444. Like, I don't know if he can put out an album like that where it's just like totally it's like it's really an album that a 50-year-old would make, that's at the top of their game. They're, in terms of like having wisdom. They've gone through everything you can go through in the music industry, and then now you're on your album, you're giving wisdom away, and you still have a lot to say. You have things to write about. I don't know if Eminem's gonna be like that.
So I gotta bring up Revival again. So I don't know if he can get as in depth as Jay-Z did, where, he's talking about infidelity with Beyonce. He's talking about his mom coming out of the closet and things like that. He's talking about a lot of mature subjects. I have to say, though, on Revival, and this is the thing that I respect about this album, is that he did go kind of deep. So, for example, Walk on Water with Beyonce. He talked a lot about, basically that song is, I'm not a god. The only time I could walk on waters is if it's frozen, and if I do walk on water trying to be a god, then I'm going to drown. He talks about his insecurities, how the things that people say really do get to him. Mm-hmm. So we do kind of get in Revival a lot of in-depth feelings. But the thing, as I said before with Revival, is that my personal opinion is that it was imbalanced. There were too many of these very sappy, too in-depth songs that we were like, you know what? This doesn't match the Eminem that we know, so we don't like this. Jay-Z, however, has been talking about semi-deep things throughout his career for his time in the decade that he was in. Now that he's in his 50s, late 40s?
Late 40s, 50s.
It's now talking about kids. The Black Album was basically his, back in 2004 or 5, that was his exit out. He was in his late 30s at that time. Another song that he did was 30 something. That's a very mature song. I played that when I turned 30 because it was just like, I don't have the right watch, I got the right watch. Right. I'm not wearing these fancy studded things. Like, I'm wearing a Fitbit now. I'm wearing, whatever. Going back, I think Eminem did this in his own way in Revival, but we kind of threw it in the trash. So he's going back to some old roots things of his early career. He was making fun of Christina Aguilera, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, all these boy bands. He made his career trashing other people. And it's not as true. In-depth as that, but it's going back to that a little bit.
It is. It's more of like the Slim Shady alter ego, so to speak. Hip-hop generally has been for the younger artists. It's generally a young man's sport.
The people that were doing it were in their teens. They were between the ages of 15 and 20 or so. We haven't had an era where we have this amount of older artists. We don't have that. So personal opinion, we're so used to these young people rapping about their come up, how they were in the gutters. Now they have all this money. They don't know what to do with it. They're living this rich and lavish lifestyle. We're not used to this new thing of, well, what's life like after you built up this lavish lifestyle? What happens now?
What do you have to say? Yeah.
What do you have to say about the now? We've heard about that. But like you're kind of alluding to, in their 40s and their 50s, we don't expect them to do all these things that we've been hearing about. Those are for the 20-year-olds. You need maturity.
Right. But I'm sure he has more to say than just like crazy, like rapping crazy, and he does really clever things, and he says a lot of cool things in a cool way, but there has to be more. And what I want to transition into a little bit is the features, and I think an artist that has done that in an amazing way is Royce the 5'9". Like, he's still putting out he's probably putting out his best music later in his career. Like in the last 5-6 years, he's put out his best albums.
On what grounds? So here's what I would say. So I think stylistically and in terms of lyrics and everything, I would say Eminem's getting better. I think too, Royce the 5'9" is getting better in terms of how they're constructing their verses, how they want you to perceive their bars, what the content in which they're saying. Maybe so much the age that he is in is not lining up with what he's putting into that formula. I can agree with. I can see that.
I mean, Royce putting out Book of Ryan, what was it, 2 years ago? That was such an amazing album, and it had a lot of mature content on there.
What I wanted to add was I think it's complicated because you are also. I agree with everything that you're saying in terms of like the lyrical content that's in it based on where your age is and your maturity. But you're also your audience too. If the majority of these people listening to music are between the ages of 18 and 15, 16 and 20 or so, they may not want to hear about what life is like in his 50s. One of the kids I work with has even said, like, it's kind of weird hearing this old man talk about these things. Like, no one wants to really hear that. But also the game has shifted a lot. A lot of these people coming out right now, they don't necessarily have this in-depth content in the things that they talk about. Right. So if Eminem's coming out with these things in this maturity, it may not sell as well. It'll sell to you and I, but how much of that population do we represent versus these young folk that are out here also listening to music? So you have to find that balance of who you're selling to versus, who's
and I
buying.
think like you said, trying to reach a younger audience, Eminem is trying to do that on this album. Like, he has Juice WRLD featured on here. He has Young M.A. He has Anderson .Paak. Like, all these artists appeal to all the younger fan base that's out there. And I think that's a strategic move more than anything. He knows that, I think he knows that it's a business first and foremost. Like, he needs to reach a certain audience and he needs to reach certain numbers, and part of that is trying to appeal to the younger crowd.
Yeah, and I think that's where one of the critiques that I have going in for this album is I don't know, I don't feel like his style really matches well with those of like Juice WRLD's, the song he does with Juice WRLD, Godzilla. It's not a terrible song, but I don't feel like Eminem meshes well with that type of style with this new generation of artists that are coming out. It's kind of off to me. And is it because I'm so used to what I grew up with him and not that style? Mm-hmm. That is definitely an influence. I can't argue that. I will say though too, I like that the amount of tracks like that was reduced as opposed to Revival, where I can't think of the number, but there was a good 4 or 5 tracks where they were like that if they weren't slow. Mm-hmm. So I like that he cut down on that, but I also appreciate that he's trying to mesh with the new styles and to do these types of things.
Yeah, and I love that he put Black Thought on the album, like, and Q-Tip. Mm-hmm. Like, that's amazing to me. Like, that's like hip hop royalty that he's getting on his albums, and it's awesome. I think it's awesome that Eminem's doing that. I think he needs to do that more. Right.
And I would love to see that done more. I mean, I don't know. There's a thing, regardless of how old you are, the artists that you grew up with in your generation, they're all going to age out at some point, and they're all going to slow down the amount of work that they're putting out. I like this because it's, Black Thought, he dropped Streams of Thought, mm-hmm. volumes 1 and 2 over the last 2 years, I believe. Yep. But other than that, he's remotely quiet. Q-Tip is pretty quiet too. So it's kind of cool because it's bringing out these people that we grew up with, and they're all doing it together. So I really like that. It's like, man, I don't hear Q-Tip too often, but that's cool that he's doing it with someone.
I just wish he had a verse and not just the
It would have been cool if he had a verse. So that's all really cool. I'm glad Royce is on there a couple times.
And Royce produced, I think, 3 tracks on the album, or 2.
Do you think?
He produced Darkness. He produced...
He did You Gon' Learn, didn't he?
Yeah, he did You Gon' Learn. I think it might be just those 2. Oh, Royce has only been producing for like a year, and he's already getting like major placements. Like, and his album's coming out soon, and he produced the whole thing. So I think that's really exciting.
I love the sound of You Gon' Learn.
Yeah.
That's a great song.
Yeah, that's dope.
I like that. And he also has part of Slaughterhouse on there too.
Yeah.
Everyone but Joe Budden. But I really like the song. I Will.
Yeah, I think it's so dope that he put them on there. I mean, I think they deserve it. Like King Crooked, Joel Ortiz, Royce, like they put in the work, and I think they deserve the recognition. Just as solo artists, mm-hmm. they deserve more recognition. Like,
oh yeah,
they're some of the best rappers we have, and like for Eminem to, I know Slaughterhouse was signed to Shady, but for him to still want to put them on his album, like, says a lot.
Yeah, for the record, there's so many artists that they don't get a lot of play in there. I mean, King Crooked with his with the 2 mixtapes that he had where they were very political, I don't feel like they got a lot of attention at all, but they're really cool and they speak a lot of volumes on what's going on, but you're not really going to hear too much about those unless you're looking for it. So it's really cool to have these artists out, like as you said, Eminem picking them up and being like, yo, let's do a track together, let's get out, instead of only focusing on, I need to get who's hot right now. A couple years ago, everyone was trying to get on a track with Lil Wayne because he was hot. And I like that he's not doing this in this album. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, like, I do like music to be murdered by. I thought, too, with him doing 20 tracks, mm-hmm. that kind of told me that he got comfortable going back in and making an album again. Because the last time, growing up with the Marshall Mathers LP, Slim Shady LP, the Eminem Show, and so on and so forth, those are all at least a minimum of 18 tracks. 17,
They're
18
long
tracks.
albums.
They're long albums. Revival came out.
Yeah. But I don't think he needs to stick to that. I think he should be more with the times of today. I think shorter albums do better. They have more of an impact. Like, I think if he cut this album down to 12 tracks, it's more of an impact, and I think more people would enjoy it more. Like it cut out the fluff, so to speak.
I can see that. I'm just stating that I feel like if he's used to putting out 20-track albums, to me, him doing this one was, hey, I feel comfortable I feel like I'm in a good spot. I know where I should be personally. So here's a 20-track album because this is what I'm used to doing. So that kind of just showed me that he's comfortable. So that makes me kind of that has me looking forward to what he produces in the future.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think this is a great album. I think it's a step in the right direction for Eminem. I think if he had put this album out before Marshall Mathers LP2, doesn't put out that, if he didn't put out Marshall Mathers LP2 and he didn't put out Revival and he put out this album before those two, I think people look at Eminem differently. And I think they're not clowning on him. They're not saying he's putting out whack music now. They're not saying he's falling off. I think they're saying, oh, Eminem's still got it. Like he's still putting out cool music.
The other, as you bring up Marshall Mathers LP2, the thing that I like is that he's actually listening to the criticism. So for Marshall Mathers LP2, some of the criticism he got was that there's too many rock songs in these albums. After that, there were maybe 2 or 3 per se. Right. So he kind of cut down. But I feel like he's taking the criticism and going along well, but not wanting to change the root of who he actually is. So it gives me a lot of respect for him. You guys, okay, I can tune this and I can tune that. I hear you, but I'm not going to change everything.
Right.
I'm still going to do
I think he is listening to his fans, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for what he puts out next. I'm hoping that it's a Bad Meets Evil album. That's what I want from him.
Yeah.
I want him and Royce to go back and forth. I think.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. I hope they drop that. That'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, man, I mean, going through the album overall, like I do like it. There aren't too many complaints about it. We talked about the ones that we skip, but even looking at the ones that we skip, they're not that bad. They just don't resonate with us for whatever reason.
And I think what I really like about this album is that when you really like dive into the lyrics and like you pay attention to everything he says, like you're gonna catch new stuff every time you listen to a song. Like you're gonna catch a bar that went over your head the first 4 times you listen to it, and then you finally got it, and you're like, oh shit, that's crazy.
Yeah.
How did he think of that?
That's why I've always really liked him for the stuff that he plugs in there.
He has so many references to older hip hop artists or just random references that you're like, wait, how did he just connect those two things?
Right.
I think that's cool. It's kind of like a hip hop geek thing to get into, but that's what Eminem is. He's a hip hop geek. Like first and foremost, like he loves hip hop. He loves the older generation. He loves studying it. He's a geek.
Right. And he's not necessarily just throwing things in there to get him in, to cram him in. Like it makes sense when he throws these bars in. So I like it. I like it overall. So with that said, is this something that you would have tell other people that they should listen to?
Going with our Rap Thought podcast, not a review, but it's how we feel about the album. For me, this is an album I'm gonna play for myself, and I would bump this with friends. If I have some friends in my car, I'll bump a couple tracks, and I want to see their reaction when Eminem says something crazy. Like I want to share this. I might not share it with everyone, but I'll share this with friends. I
agree with that. I mean, it's definitely an album that I'm gonna play when I have a long car ride and I'm going somewhere. But I'm a little different with music. I don't maybe it's because parts of me are insecure of like, I don't want you to not like my music.
Right.
I may not play this for other people unless I know, if you're an Eminem fan, I'm going to play this for you. I mean, like, yeah, man, you should check this out. One of my friends sent me a text like, hey, what do you think about this album? Which is that's prime because he's also a fan as well. And, I told him, like, yeah, man, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I do enjoy it. If you're a fan of him, I would say pick it up.
It's got replay value. And
it does.
And that's good. That's what we want from from albums that we listen to. We want to go back to them, and
Right.
we want to revisit them, and we want to catch things that we didn't catch before. And I think that's what makes a good hip hop album.
Absolutely. And as you said before, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of just these clever things he throws in that you don't catch the first 5 or 6 times you listen to a song. Like, you really have to thoroughly go through it a few times to really get on these things. So, but yeah, I dig it. I like it.
Awesome. So yeah, that's the Rap Top podcast on Eminem's Music to Be Murdered By.